Hello everyone, I'm Svetlana Abramova from the University of Innsbruck, and today I'm going to talk about the anatomy of a high-profile data breach. This is a joint work with Ryan and Böhme. Why do we need to study data breaches? Isn't there enough research on this topic? Well, indeed, data breach research is quite active and fruitful area, scattered along many different disciplines. However, all these data breach studies, they look at organizations, their response strategies, and associated costs. And topics like the real effects on victims are understudied in literature. So it's important to study data breaches in order to measure harm which victims experience following up a data breach, also to examine consumer sentiments with regards to loyalty and trust into the company, and also to understand response behavior and response actions of victims after a data breach. Let me give you some examples of data breaches that happened in the last years: Intrust, Acronis, LastPass, Ledger. Actually, what unites all these data breaches is that all these organizations, they are security vendors and service providers whose mission is, somewhat ironic, to provide excellence in security. We call these data breaches high profile because they affect security vendors, and these data breaches may reveal some valuable facts about victims and their security actions, which can be used as stepping stone for future attacks. Since these data breaches are quite novel, they are barely covered in data breach research, and we attempted to close or address this gap in our study by looking at one specific data breach which happened in 2020. This data breach case affected Ledger, and maybe some of you know that Ledger is a global producer of hardware wallet, crypto wallet devices. As you can see, this is just portable devices which are designed for the secure storage of crypto assets. So this data breach happened in the second half of 2020, and customer data got leaked. In particular, first and last name, postal and email addresses, as well as phone numbers were exposed of about 270K crypto wallet buyers. And since this data breach affected Ledger, we can assume that most of the victims are actually crypto asset owners. What's interesting about crypto asset owners and why this data breach so interesting to us? So crypto asset owners, they're first attractive targets for fraudsters who would like to monetize this leaked data. More importantly, crypto asset owners are known to be affluent, tech-savvy, security literate, as well as mistrustful sometimes. And we have experienced this ourselves when we saw this message on Reddit, which was questioning the authenticity of our study as well as of my identity. And however, these kind of traits, they actually work in our favor because crypto asset owners might be hard to manipulate, and they can also serve as valuable knowledge or as valuable sources of information, knowledge when it comes to reporting about the effects of a data breach. However, there is one caveat which I would like to mention with regards to crypto asset owners. They are not easy to talk to. So it's really hard to obtain a sample of reasonable size of crypto asset owners, and this has been shown in behavioral research in the past. In general, data breach research offers several methods how to sample victims. On one hand, you can go and ask a population, a certain group of population, whether they have experienced a data breach. Of course, the size of your sample will be lower if you focus just on specific data breach. However, this method is prone to some response errors and also noise in the collected data. Another way of sampling victims of a data breach is to actually get a convenience sample first and then present this convenience sample as some kind of scenario or description of a hypothetical scenario. Imagine you fall victim to a data breach and then you get responses. Again, this kind of method is prone to some validity issues, especially when it comes to reporting about hypothetical behavioral actions and responses. Finally, you can actually go and ask the victim population itself, for example, by using leaked data sets. Of course, there are many legal and ethical questions concerning this method, and as our own literature search has shown, there exists little guidance in the academic literature in this respect. We used this sampling method for our purpose, and we sampled or recruited our participants using the leaked email addresses. In terms of legal aspect, we didn't have an opportunity to actually ask for explicit consent of our respondents to process their email addresses. So we did this on the grounds of the legitimate interest as well as the freedom of scientific research. And for the survey and all the items that we collected after the initial contact with our respondents, we asked for explicit consent. In terms of ethical aspects, we followed the common approach, and we did the benefit and risk analysis. So in terms of benefits, we argue that this particular data set of leaked email addresses, it gave us really unique research opportunity to sample crypto asset owners who are at the same time confirmed victims of this particular data breach. And we didn't have any other means to do this. And in terms of risk, we identified different stakeholders and also risks involved and implemented a set of mitigation strategies for each stakeholder group. There is a separate section just on the legal and ethical aspects in our paper that you can have a look at. So let me give you the timeline of our research. In December 2020, a public dump got exposed on one of the forums, and this public dump involved all these data items that I mentioned before, and we erased all the unnecessary data items, and we just used email addresses for our purposes. We continued first way of consulting with our data protection office as well with our legal experts looking for their legal advice for this study. Then we continued with the questionnaire design. We also applied for the ethical approval and got our IAB approval in August 2021. We set up the questionnaire on a platform, and in November we started with the recruitment and data collection, which was running till the end of February. So as you can see here, we had about like 1 year time period before the public dump got exposed and the recruitment and data collection started. So it means that we chose this time frame specifically in order of potential harms to occur in real life, and also so that our respondents can still keep these episodes in their memory, and then they can recollect and provide these responses in a questionnaire. We send out invitations. Here you can see an example of our email, which contained a lot of information about our study, as required also by the General Data Protection Regulation. And in total, we have sent out 32K non-personalized one-off emails, which accounts for about 12% of the leaked records. So we intentionally didn't send out any reminders for ethical reasons, and we also didn't offer compensation in order to avoid the risk of multiple participation in our survey. And we collected 104 responses after the data cleaning, which we analyzed in our paper. So in the paper, we have many different results, and given the time constraint, I'm going to present one selected finding for each of these categories, which highlights the most interesting findings. So in terms of measuring harm, we were interested whether crypto assets have incurred any financial losses related to their digital assets. And indeed, a few victims, or namely 10 victims, report financial losses. As you can see, these losses vary a lot in terms of magnitude, as well as of the reported cost, whether it was due to scam, theft, or lost keys. However, this picture doesn't give us a whole overview what happened. So in the separate question, we ask how likely is it that the loss of crypto asset was caused by the data breach incident. And you can see here that only 4 out of 10 victims report that it's very likely or likely that the losses were caused particularly by this data breach. In terms of examining consumer sentiments, we were interested whether customers have changed their attitudes towards the company or towards the vendor and choose the product before and after the breach. So we had 2 separate questions, and we asked about the attitudes to the vendor before the breach and after the breach. And we can see here that with respect to the company, about like half of the sample reported negative or very negative attitudes towards the vendor after the breach. However, looking at the attitudes to the product, we do not see so drastic changes with respect to this category. And I would like to mention that the products were not compromised by this data breach. So it was pure marketing data breach. So these results, they tell us that the surveyed victims are able actually to differentiate between the vendor reputation and product security features. And finally, in terms of understanding response behavior, we also ask our respondents whether they have taken any litigation efforts. And usually litigation is postulated in research as a kind of like method to protect victims and to incentivize companies to invest into security. And also the US National Cybersecurity Strategy, published just in March this year, sets out that it's important to reshape laws that govern liability for data losses and harm caused by cybersecurity errors. However, our survey showed us that the victims appear quite skeptical about the success of litigation. So they say that it's too much effort with little perspective of success, harm is already done, and it's not worthwhile doing this. So let me summarize several lessons that we have learned during this quite long project. First of all, we didn't find any smoking gun in the aftermath of this breach. So mostly all the respondents, they reported quite common after breach effects or harms. In terms of the survey instrument, we advise all the researchers always ask for one's confidence in whether a specific effect is actually can be linked to a data breach. And also we advise to differentiate harm as granular as possible. Unfortunately, for example, in our survey, we didn't differentiate between email scams and phone scams, and apparently phone scams were much more annoying to the respondents than the email scams. Also, our risk analysis missed some unanticipated small costs on the stakeholders, which we report in the paper. And finally, we show that the sampling from leaked data sets is actually feasible, but it consumes lots of time, lots of effort, as well as some nerves, but especially when you see these kind of messages on social media websites. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any of your questions, and please also feel free to approach me after the talk.